Welcome back to Power and Politics. The Alberta government is asking Ottawa for $30 billion to invest in technology that could help reduce carbon emissions. Premier Jason Kenney says there's no way for Canada to meet emission reduction targets without it.
Where we were a global leader, we're at risk of falling behind if we don't up our game. That's going to require major investments. Government of Canada, of course, has committed to very ambitious emissions reduction targets. And it's our view that there's no feasible way for Canada to achieve those targets within the stated timelines without a widespread application of game-changing technology like CCUS.
CCUS stands for Carbon Capture, Utilization and Storage. The technology filters or removes carbon emissions from the atmosphere to be stored or repurposed. Both levels of governments have already invested millions in such current projects. Should taxpayers continue to foot the bill for companies to adopt the technologies? Sonya Savage is Alberta's Energy Minister. She joins us now from Edmonton. Hi, Minister. Good to see you as always. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on today.
You're asking the federal government for $30 billion, but your government's budget only earmarked about $73 million in 2021-22 for programs to attract investment in carbon capture projects. Why is this mostly, if not all, on the feds, and are you prepared, is your government prepared to invest more?
Well, I think what we're looking for is for the federal government to step up, to step up first, because we know if Canada, if what we want to do is meet the Paris emission reduction targets by 2030, if we want to get to net zero by 2050, if this is what we want to do as a country, this is how you do it. And we're not going to get there without carbon capture and storage. We're not going to get there without Alberta. And so we need the federal government to step up. We've set up a working group between both governments to explore the different the types of policy mechanisms and levers, how we can incent investment, what policies work both federally and provincially, and what we have to do collectively to get there.
Respectfully, though, my question was whether or not your government is willing to invest more than the $73 million allocated in the budget. I take your point that you're looking for the feds to do more as well, but are you prepared to?
Yeah, well, we've been investing in emissions reduction technology for well over a decade with our TIER fund, with our carbon levy on heavy emitters that gets recycled back into the industry to pay for carbon reducing technologies. We've invested $1.2 billion already in carbon capture, utilization and storage with the Quest project and with the Alberta Carbon Trunk Line. So we'll continue to do our part, but what we really need is we need a signal from the federal government. We need them to step up first. We need them to be at the table with us to get this done.
How sure are you, Minister, that this is a sound investment for taxpayer dollars? And I ask for a couple of reasons. I looked, for example, to the capture facility, carbon capture facility in Saskatchewan near Estevan. As of 2019, it had opened in 2014. It's only achieved its target for capturing carbon dioxide once, and that was in 2016. It was former Alberta Premier, the late Jim Prentice, who was not on board with all of this and expressed concern around the expense, for example, and that governments and taxpayers were taking them on. How sure are you that it is a sound investment?
Well, I think we've had some demonstration projects in Alberta over a decade ago that have come to fruition. We just celebrated today the Alberta Carbon Trunk Line. The Enhanced project has sequestered, through 8 enhanced oil recovery, over a million tons of megatons of carbon. The Quest project has already done 5 million megatons of carbon. So these projects work. The technology has been proven. It's been proven around the world. In the United States, where we used to be ahead of the United States with this technology, they're incenting it, and they've got projects all over the place, at least 12 major projects underway for carbon capture. Around the world, globally, they've said there is no way to get to net zero globally without carbon capture. We can't do it in Canada. We can't do it anywhere without it. And the technology has been proven, and it needs to be deployed in a very large fashion. And it needs to be done quickly to start being able to meet our targets.
If it's so great, why aren't companies endeavoring this on their own or investing private dollars? And I put to you some analysis, for example, that shows the higher the price on carbon goes, the more attractive it becomes for companies to use their own money for projects like this versus taxpayers having to foot the bill. From that perspective, your government has opposed the carbon tax and its increase. Are you willing to change your mind? Should you?
Well, I think we've got one of the reasons we've got the working group underway between federal government and the provincial government, and at the table we have an industry advisory committee. And this isn't just for oil and gas; it includes all sectors. It includes power, it includes cement, fertilizer, and sectors right across our industrial sector on how do we decarbonize. Remember the targets. The Paris targets of 2030 targets are set by the federal government. If we want to meet them, we're going to have to do things big, and we're going to have to start doing it quick. And we know we can't get there without carbon capture and storage, so we're going to need the federal government to step up at the table as well.
I take your point, Minister, but with respect, my question was around a price on carbon. Your government actively, as a party, first campaigned. I know you have a price on carbon, but what you're against, you're fighting in court, is a higher price, an escalating price that the federal government has set. The evidence that I've seen shows that carbon capture becomes more attractive as a private investment the higher the price on carbon goes. Does that necessitate a change in position from your government?
Yeah. Alberta is actually the first jurisdiction in North America to put a price on carbon, and we did that in 2007. And what we're doing with the carbon levy from that is we are reinvesting it into emission reduction technology. So we've been at this for over a decade on how to do this. We've worked very closely with our industry. We were working on a Made in Alberta solution with our industry. And by industry, I mean all sectors, not just the oil and gas sector, but a Made in Alberta solution on how do we enable the kind of massive investment that's needed to get to net zero, to get to the Paris targets. And it's going to involve both levels of government. It's going to involve the private sector. It's going to involve the financial community. We know an endeavor of this kind is going to be enormous. It took a huge effort years ago in the oil sands to build the oil sands, to get the oil out of the sands, and it's going to take a huge endeavor to get the carbon to get our emissions to net zero.
Just very quickly, though, Minister, does incentivizing further investment necessitate a higher price on carbon?
Well, I think that's one of the things the working group is going to have to tell us, and that's what the financial sector and what the industry is going to have to tell us. And that's why we're all coming together. That's why we've signed the Memorandum of Understanding with the federal government to work together across departments to bring industry in, to bring experts in, including experts from the financial sector, on how do we get this done? What are the various mechanisms? We're not just looking at a price on carbon. We're looking at mechanisms like a 45Q tax credit, like in the United States. We're looking at whether it's grants from the provincial government, whether it's a price on carbon. We're looking at all sorts of different mechanisms and policies that will enable us to move forward.
Okay, Minister Savage, I'll leave it there. I thank you for your time as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks.
Sonya Savage is Alberta's Energy Minister.